Kat, you can mute your microphone until we start.
Oh, okay. Let me see where that. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, great. Okay, so it looks like we are live. We'll just wait a couple minutes, maybe a couple seconds. Kat, you can mute your microphone until we start.
Oh, okay. Let me see where that.
Hey, everybody, we're going to do a quick sound check. If you could please, in the chat box, just let us know that you can hear us okay and that you have a screen showing up on your computer. And that would be super helpful. There should be a chat box at the bottom of the page. So if you could just let us know how our sound is, we would really appreciate it. And we'll begin in just a minute.
Welcome. So we're very excited to have you. I'm Rabbi Shlomo Slatkin. I'm here with my wife Rivka and with Dr. Kat
Hi
Peoples.
there.
And we're very excited to share this webinar. It's really the first time we've had some articles about addiction, but this is really the first time we really addressed the topic
Kat, if you
extensively.
want to unmute yourself so we can hear you. We can definitely see. We just...
Oh,
there we go.
Great.
All right.
Good. And we have welcome everyone who's attending live. We have a lot of people listening on. We'll be listening to the recording. Welcome you as well.
And thank you so much, Kat, for getting in touch with us and wanting to share your amazing information on addictions. It's something that we've been wanting to talk about for a while. It's been on our list, and I think we've just kind of waited for that like perfect opportunity and way to share this information with people. And so it was so awesome to get in touch with you, and your invitation to doing this together.
Yeah, likewise. It's great. It's been great working together. And I always tell my students too that no matter what field you're in, addiction will always touch you, and I think that's true for everybody. It's just, it's someone's mom or someone's brother or some, husband and wife or whatever. So I'm so glad that we're going to be able to do this and give the information out. So it's going to be super helpful today, I think.
Awesome.
Good. So we're going to get started. We're going to have a brief introduction. So you let us know. Talk about what we're going to be talking about today and who we are, and then we're going to have the presentation after that. So today's topic is addiction recovery in marriage: how to strengthen your relationship because of addiction rather than in spite of it.
Hold on, I just want to make sure everyone can see our slides. Can you see those, Kat?
I can see them, yes.
Okay, perfect.
And a lot of people think that if there is addiction in the relationship, that it's going to weaken the relationship. In fact, that can actually strengthen it. So let's go to. So do you or your spouse struggle with addiction? Are you afraid addictive behaviors are ruining your marriage? And do you want to fix your marriage but feel like it's too hard? And we've gotten a lot of response from those who have signed up and people who are on our list, readers on our website and our blog, told us that while some of you here actually are in recovery, or you have a spouse or loved one that's in recovery, a lot of people are dealing with active addiction, and it's not even necessarily drug or alcohol, but even things that you maybe not even be aware of, or maybe the spouse is in denial. There's a lot of internet. A lot of people want to know about internet addiction. And we'll talk a little bit later. What is actually, how do you know if someone's addicted? If someone's spending 3 hours on the computer every night, is that an addiction or not? So that's a concern a lot of you had about internet addiction, food, shopping, sex addiction, pornography addiction. So these are smoking. So it's not just drug and alcohol, but there's a whole gamut of addictions. And we're going to be, we'd like to hear from you if you feel that you're in which camp you're in, if you're more interested in hearing about the recovery piece and how to deal with that once you're already in recovery, or how do you work on the relationship when there's an active addiction and your spouse is not in recovery, or maybe they're not in any treatment and not even or perhaps even denying that they have a problem. Because that's a whole new ball of wax.
Is that what active addiction is? It's when people know there's a problem and they just haven't started getting treatment for it? That's what, okay.
Yeah,
wanted to make it clear for anybody who's wondering what that means.
Right, meaning if someone's not in treatment, because I found personally, most of the couples that I've dealt with where there is an addiction, they're usually in some type of treatment already. People always ask me, so what happens if you have someone who's is an addict? Do you refer them out for individual therapy? And I said, most of the people are already coming in with the problem. I don't want to say under control, but they're in a 12-step group. They're working on it. They're in recovery. They're not necessarily active. And I think especially with drug and alcohol, if there's an active addiction, it's very hard to even get both people in the door for couples counseling. But for some of these other addictions, the internet addiction, which might seem a little bit, I don't want to say it's more benign, it can be equally as devastating, but it just presents differently, and it's perhaps hard for us to really understand, what's the difference between an addiction and just, a hobby. Someone watching TV for hours on end, does it mean they're addicted, or it's just they're relaxing? So we'll address all these topics, but I just wanted to let everybody know that some of these, that it's not just, even if you're not in recovery, there's a lot to discuss today. So if you feel like these addictive behaviors or relapses or any other recovery issues are holding you back from really creating the marriage that you've always wanted, you can turn things around. And we're going to learn today how to make that addiction and recovery a benefit rather than a liability in your relationship. So as much as we often think that if there's an addiction, perhaps it means the relationship can't sustain itself, or even getting into a relationship, if you're not committed yet, let's say you're engaged and you find that there's an addiction, is that a liability? Is that something it means that you have to break off the relationship? So we're going to show you today that it's something that actually can benefit you, and specifically the person that you chose. It can be an asset to your own personal growth and healing.
Just lost that slide.
Oh, the slide disappeared.
And when Kat and are we back? I hope everybody can hear us. Kat, can you hear us? Are you muted? No, I don't think you're muted. I don't know why we're having this difficulty. Hold on. Can you hear us, Kat?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure.
Sometimes there are technological
challenges.
Anyways, Murphy's Law.
Sorry about that, guys. If you get dumped out of the connection, just go right back to the webinar live link and just resume, click refresh. You were saying how that the addiction can truly be a benefit rather than a liability. And I have to thank Kat for that, because when we were coming up with the title for today, and I love that about Kat, what you created, that it's like, it can really be a benefit. And that was such an eye-opener to me. I couldn't really believe that. And I can't wait to hear from Kat about how that's possible. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really special.
And we know that in Imago that the challenges that a couple faces are usually, once we explore them, they are a benefit to the relationship as opposed to a liability. But addiction, it's very easy to kind of think that maybe it's your spouse's problem and it's really not going to be beneficial in any way for you. So
you are in the right place.
Yeah, we're looking
if
to hear that.
you want this to benefit your marriage rather than become a liability, then you are in the right place.
So here's what we're going to cover today. How to make your marriage stronger because of the addiction recovery issues you and your spouse deal with on a daily basis. Why you're meant to be together. How to handle lapses and relapses productively. How to approach the various behavioral addictions that we mentioned already: internet, pornography, food, cell phone, texting, hoarding, shopping. How to solve problems in arguments rather than fighting about the same thing over and over again. And there's more resources where you can get the support that you need for your situation. And there's only so much we can cover in this time today. We can't cover everything that you need to know, but we're going to do our best to give you enough practical information and tools that you can use to take home to your relationship. And for those of you who stay till the very end, we are going to be offering a free peace process template. And this is going to be it's a documented PDF, which is going to give you some sentence stems to use it when you're during conflict, how to have a productive conversation, how to own your feelings and share what's going on for you in a non-threatening way, and to create peace in your relationship. So please stay on till the very end so you can do that.
And that's a resource that was created by Dr. Kat. So that was
Right.
really helpful. When I looked at that, I thought that was fabulous.
Yeah, we really thank you for sharing that with us, and we're looking forward for those of you to use it. And good, so let's get right into the introductions just about who we are. Because some of you know either one of us or both of us, or some of you might not know any of us. So my name is Shlomo Slatkin, and I have a master's in counseling psychology. I've been working with couples for over a decade in Imago relationship therapy, working exclusively with couples and relationship issues. This matter of couplehood and relationship issues is extremely personal to us. And we work together, my wife and I, Rivka, work together to help restore marriages and help couples and families create a happier life together. This is just some of the places where our work has been featured. So speech. And we actually had some challenges I guess after our first, this is not our first, this is our second generation of kids. But our first child, when she was born, we started experiencing some conflict, and we got help. We went to an Imago therapist, and that really changed the course of history. It changed our relationship. It changed our path in terms of professionally to go into this, to really help other people experience the same growth and healing and joy that we experienced. And we're grateful today, thank God, that we found Imago therapy, because I don't know if we would be with all the stressors that life has. And all the individual issues that we bring to the table, that this was really a lifesaver for us. So we don't just teach this, we really believe in it. We've seen it firsthand how it's helped us.
And we use it.
And we still use it, and we see how it helps couples. So we're really passionate about the work we do, and we're excited to share with you some of that today. And Dr. Kat Peoples is joining us. She has been in practice for over 15 years, working exclusively with couples and addiction issues. So we're really excited to hear from you, Kat, because we know that you have a specialty in this area in working with addictions. And it's really important to, addictions, while all relationship issues have certain themes to them, it's really important to know about how to deal specifically with addictions, because, as we'll learn, they have their own unique challenges that come up. And I don't know if you want to share, Kat, a little bit about yourself and some of your work. This is where you've been featured, publications and
yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Kat.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Pretty much covered those beginning slides, so I'll start here. I started working in the addictions field in 1999, straight out of college. I've worked at every level of care. I've done everything from therapy to supervision, and I started working with couples shortly after that. So bringing those two hand in hand has been something I've been doing for 15 years. And my husband struggled with addiction throughout his upbringing and his childhood. And so it's very much a part of our marriage as well, the recovery process and the ups and downs that go with that stuff. And we have 2 beautiful daughters, and I can say that we really are truly soulmates because of all of the hardships that we go through and all of the ways that we're able to solve it. So addiction really has been an asset. The recovery process has been an asset for us, and I'm going to teach you how it can be an asset for you.
Amazing.
That's great. Looking forward to hearing it.
I love this picture.
Yeah. That's my little lady, Matilda. We have 2 daughters, and just a little picture of kind of what our home life looks like. We're always together, and we both work from home, so we're raising our 2 little girls. So we have a lot of togetherness. Definitely is a wonderful thing to be able to have the recovery piece there and to be able to grow together. And he really teaches me as much as I can teach him. So it's really just an amazing thing. We really, really has become an asset for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. I want to hear.
Okay.
I want to know how you did this. And
good. So let's put we're going to put on the video back on.
Okay. Let's see how we do this.
And I'd like to start just, if you could share with us kind of how it, just in general about addictions, because some people aren't familiar. Obviously, if someone's in recovery, they're already dealing with it. But if someone who's not in recovery, a lot of the people who emailed us about their spouse, how would you define addictions? How do you know if a behavior is an addiction or just an outlet?
Well, there's so many behavioral addictions. It's pornography, if it's eating, if it's shopping. I mean, essentially, we addicted to anything. We addicted to running. That's actually caused a lot of affairs too. Marathons, by the way. But but really, you can go into the diagnostic manual and get all of the criteria and all of that. But in short, an addiction is, if it's a problem in your marriage, if it's a problem on your relationships, if it's getting in the way of you living day to day, then you can probably say it's a problem. And that way, I would say you probably have some sort of addiction issue that you want to deal with. So it doesn't have to be, obsession looks different in different ways. But basically, if you depend on something and it overruns your life and it goes primary to your relationship, your children, any of that stuff, then you're dealing with an addiction. And so that's where you really need to manage it. So
if you're fighting with your spouse to get off their phone when you're talking to them, is that, would you do that? I'm not speaking.
Well, I would say this, Rivka, it's a good question. I would say one time, no. Okay, so one time, no. One time is an incident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times or more is usually a pattern. So if it's you're all constantly on your phone, and over, say, the past 6 months, your marriage is really taking a downturn because you're so estranged from your spouse because you're constantly on your phone, you're probably looking at addictive patterns. You're probably looking at addictive behavior. So, yeah, that's really a good question. So you can really be addicted to your phone, yes.
So how does it, I remember in school, everyone had to take a drug and alcohol course for licensure. And I remember them saying that at least alcohol addiction, drug addiction is a disease. It's not just, how does that tie into this idea that, I understand the idea that it's any behavior that's kind of interfering with your relationship is a problem, but where do we draw the line between that? And is it different for drug and alcohol because there's I guess a chemical substance that you're taking in your body as opposed to something else like shopping or?
That's a good question. Actually, there is a little bit of a difference for the disease piece, because people are still all the experts are still fighting about this. So not everybody buys into the disease concept either. But there are chemicals that you're putting into your body if you're using drugs or alcohol, obviously, that have a direct physical impact on your brain. And there there are some, particularly men actually, whenever they're adolescents, whenever they take in alcohol, that they get more of a jolt and they're, I don't want to say instantly addicted, but that they have a harder time managing alcohol consumption as opposed to maybe some other people. So they have identified pieces in the brain where alcohol and drugs do actually trigger neurons in the brain that have an impact on people's behavior. But that's not to say that you don't have control in the first, few times. Addiction is always a pattern. And so anytime, if somebody takes cocaine for the first time, they're not going to be powerless against cocaine completely and just start running off with the races. But they'll probably like, oh, that was really great. They might get more of a rush, and they might have a different personality where they have, we've heard of the addictive personalities. Like, oh, this is really great, and maybe I'll try it again, and maybe I'll try it again. And that's where the behavioral piece comes in too with addictions, is that it ends up becoming a pattern much quicker. And so the disease concept is that basically there's something in the brain that gets triggered, and once it's there, which is also true with drug and alcohol, because once those pathways are created, they can't be uncreated. Also with behavioral addiction. So imagine like a lawnmower, right? So if you have a lawn and you mow the same strip of land over and over and over again, right? So that's a neural pathway that you create in your brain. So it's the same thing with addiction. It's the same thing with pornography, on your phone, anything. And then all of a sudden, you want to stop doing that. Well, you have this big strip of land that's been created in your lawn. And so in order to stop that, you have to start mowing the whole lawn, right? Well, guess what? That one thing that you've been mowing for 10 years, it's going to be hard to stop. It's going to be hard to disappear. It's going to be there, and after a while it'll disappear, but it's probably going to take a while, right? Well, that's sort of how you can explain the brain working. So the disease concept is that neuro pathway, that strip of lawn has been created. And so it's there. And so you can't just make it go away. And so in some sense, this addiction piece is separate. It is something in the brain. It is this strip of land. And that also can be created with behavioral addictions as well. So because it is, whether you're putting in cocaine or alcohol, it could be a different behavior. It could be the way the brain reacts, but it's the pattern is still created. So you're still
reinforcing that. You're reinforcing that neural pathway by repeating it over and over again until you almost lose. I would say, and then you lose free choice almost. It becomes
isn't it like a habit? Like if a guy comes home from work and like watches porn every single time he gets home from work, he's going to get used to that, right? And that's like that's a habit, but a habit that's going to turn into a neural pathway, right? Right,
exactly. But that's not to say that there's no control over it, because people in addiction are only as good as their resources. And so people end up getting help when the resources go down or when the consequences go up. So there's always a choice to be able to turn things around. But the neural pathway piece means that it's going to be hard. It'll be harder for someone with the neural pathway than someone without it, right? Because that ritual has been created over and over and over again, and the brain seeks it. And so now it's going to be like, oh, this is so hard, not coming home and not being able to turn on my pornography because it's this reward ritual that's been created for so long, as opposed to the wife that hasn't done it at all. She doesn't have that, neural pathway created. So I never say that people don't have a choice. People always have a choice, but the process to change and follow through is much more difficult with people that have created certain neural pathways, and now they want to change those pathways.
And total abstinence, I know, at least with drug and alcohol. I mean, food, it's more tricky when you're dealing with food addictions because you can't starve yourself. But total abstinence at least for drug and alcohol, probably for pornography and other addictions like that as well. That seems to be, at least from my experience, the preferred.
Is that what's recommended, Kat?
Well, I would say if, for sex addiction stuff, pornography, things like that, definitely total abstinence, because that, has a direct impact on your partner and your marriage. That's the problematic issue. For drugs and alcohol, sometimes people switch over drugs, switch over alcohol, and some people are able to use productively later. So they abstain for a period of time, like 6 months, and then they're able to use again. Some people can't ever do that. But there is definitely a period of abstinence that people need to have with most addictions before they can, for that lawn to grow back in, before they can start using or behaving modestly, moderately. But for some people with addictions, they're not able to do that. So it really is a fine line, and it's easier just to abstain. So that is usually the what we recommend, but that's not possible for everybody, and especially with people with food addictions. You can't stop eating, right? And so there needs to be a different recovery process for that. But it really depends. But definitely with sex addiction, yes, complete abstinence from the problematic, because you can't really be moderately seek prostitutes or something like that. That it's always going to be a problem. So
So I guess, so that's really interesting. So now I understand like how people can know if something's a problem, because you said if it affects their marriage, adversely, and it's like they've done it, more than 3 times, and it's just hard to stop. And then how do you know if it's an addiction? How it becomes an addiction is because that neural pathway is reinforced. So I guess, like, where do people get help? I mean, I know there's Overeaters Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and right?
Yeah.
There's a 12-step group for every behavioral addiction known to man, and there's a 12-step group for every other thing probably known to man, because the 12 steps really work for essentially for everything in life. If you take away the first step, which is being powerless, steps 2 through 12 actually just help you lead a good life. So I mean, that's really what it's about. So you can really do a Google search for anything. There's Overeaters Anonymous, there's Cocaine Anonymous, Methadone Anonymous, there's, Alcoholics Anonymous, obviously. There's just so many of the 12 step, but that's not something that everybody wants to go to and likes, and that's okay too. All the meetings are different, and they're available in different areas as well, depending on the fellowship. But there's also different recovery models that are not abstinence models, or smart recovery. And there's different meetings where it's a maintenance model. And then there's also, of course, just support of a sober network, and what I mean by sober is the absence of that problematic behavior or chemical. So really a Google search is the easiest way to do it. The 12-step process is definitely, it's free. It works. If you give it 100%, it works. And a lot of people don't like it because they feel like, oh, well, it's too religious. I'm not a spiritual person. But really it's just a matter of like, I can't do this on my own. So there's got to be something that I have to give power over to, because I can't control this. That's really what higher power means. So it doesn't have to be God specific, but people really have sometimes a difficult part with that 12-step process.
But it sounds like also there's not necessarily so many resources for dealing with the marriage. And that's why I love what we're doing.
Yes.
We will have a support that people that are interested in this can go to after this, is like combining it, because you're married to your spouse. And so he or she can go to the 12-step, but like, what are you going to do? The spouse.
Yeah, and exactly. And I love the work that the two of you do, and that we're combining and talking about this, because there really isn't anything out there that helps married people work on recovery and addiction in their marriage. There just isn't anything specific like that. And as you know, being in the field, and I know being in the field, sometimes you go to marriage counseling and you're not getting people that want you to stay together. So like, oh, if it's not working, just might as well get divorced. But you're here because you want to work on your marriage. And so it's really tough sometimes to even find a therapist or a counselor that's pro-marriage.
Yeah, and we're very picky with who we work with. And Kat, just like, I know that you are very pro-marriage, and you don't see an addiction as reason to end a marriage. And that's the reason why we wanted to do this with you, is because we're very strict about that. We have an article out called How My Therapist Destroyed My Marriage. And we get people contacting us every day that they found that article on Google, and they'll say, oh, my wife's therapist just advised her to leave me, or my husband, and it's such a shame.
Right. And very common too. And, so that's a common advice that people get. And it really is a shame because, just because your spouse is addicted or you're addicted doesn't mean that your marriage has to fall apart because of it. So,
what would you say to that spouse who has a partner in recovery or was actively addicted? How you were saying, like, how does that addiction strengthen your relationship and make it better as opposed to just being a liability?
It's a good question. First and foremost, I tell people not to define their marriage by their addiction. And so I think that's the number one problem in marriages that have an addiction. It's like, I'm addicted, or I'm married to an addict. I'm the one that's married to an addict, or I'm the addict, and it's this
imbalance or something.
It's a dark shadow or a dark cloud over the marriage. And so first and foremost, really, that needs to be taken aside and looked at in a different way, because addiction's a problem like anything else. Some marriages struggle with addiction. Some marriages struggle with illnesses. Some marriages struggle with narcissism. There's just so many problems, and chances are you probably wouldn't want somebody else's marriage problem. You probably keep yours, if you really looked at other people's problems. And so that's really the way that you need to approach addiction and recovery in your marriage, is that it's a problem that we can tackle together. So this doesn't define you, my husband, as the addict, or you, my wife, as the addict. Right, and that takes the power away.
And it's kind of the same when someone says, oh, my wife has bipolar, or my husband is borderline. And it's like, there's that unequalness, and it's almost like you feel like you're married to like a lesser person, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's so well put, because, you can already see the breakdown of the marriage right there is, I'm married to this sick person or this lesser person. And so already the hierarchy has changed, hasn't it? It's like caretaker and irresponsible, husband or wife kind of thing. And so whenever you do label each other like that automatically you're pitted against each other, as opposed to, hey, this addiction's a problem in our marriage and we're going to tackle this together. It doesn't matter who owns it. And here's the thing too, is that even if you're not addicted, you'll develop, and you probably have developed, patterns and behaviors that are destructive and mirror addictive patterns that your spouse has. And so that, so you're, if you want to take the grim look at it, you're both sick, Are
you saying that's because you're in a relationship with someone who's addicted, or is that you were attracted to that person originally because you also had that side of you?
I think it's both, really. Because, as we try, we look for people, and we're attracted to people that fill in things that we need to learn or we need to know to make us better people. But it can also reverse, and we can go the other way if we don't take those things and let them strengthen us and grow from those, like those things that you loved about your spouse whenever you first married all of a sudden become annoyances. Well, those are the things that, you need to grow through. And if you don't take those and apply those, then they become liability. It's the same with the addiction. So I think it's both, really. And so that's the piece too about recovery and addiction being able to strengthen your marriage, because that you were attracted for some reason or another. In fact, it's really strange because, it's not strange. It's, it's the pattern is that, my husband struggled with addiction, and also I have two best friends in the entire planet, and they're both in recovery too. And so there's something about me that is drawn to people in the recovery process or struggle with addiction, whatever it is. And I ended up in the field that way too. So it is that, but as you're together, you react to each other, right? So one person does one thing and then the other person reacts. and vice versa. And so you can become sicker or you can become better for whatever your situation is. So it's both. It's definitely both. We
And that's where
it out
the
and
marriage
it,
skills come in, probably, right?
I'm sorry?
And that's where the marriage skills come in. So you don't say the things that's going to make your spouse sicker, right?
Exactly. Right. And, you know, there's definitely, you know, probably the reason everybody here is at the webinar is because they're approaching something's not working, you know, something's not working with the addiction, with the recovery, and they're seeking help. And so it's a matter of, you know, how do I turn this around? And the big piece also is that, you know, it'll be here as long as you're with your spouse or you're the one that has the addiction. That problem's going to be there and you're going to have to manage it. You know, you can't just pretend that it's going to go away, and then that's okay too. And chances are you'll probably, if you end up divorcing, you'll probably end up finding somebody just like your spouse.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you that. Do you think if someone would get divorced, they'd attract that same?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we in Imago, you know, just the general issues that couples face. I remember I was talking to a psychiatrist who, he doesn't practice Imago. He basically dispenses medication. But he said, you know, I believe that because I had somebody who came in here and he was complaining about his wife, and I said, you know, you need to work on it because you think you're going to get married to someone else who have the same problems. He married somebody else. Somebody looked almost identical, and the same issues, and wound up getting divorced a second time. So the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I think one of the powerful things about at least the Imago approach, and it sounds like, you know, we both have the same feelings about this, that you are going to pick somebody. Marriage is not just a coincidence who you pick. You're going to be attracted to somebody who is going to a similar kind of prototype,
right?
And for the purpose of growth and healing, and someone who's going to push your buttons. But those issues that you're going to deal with are going to be, if you work on them together, you'll come out much stronger. So again, it's not a liability. It's actually, you know, you pick this person for a reason, and if you can work through it, you can create a phenomenal relationship.
So it's more than just like going to meetings together makes you stronger. It's not that. It's that you actually heal yourself because you realize that this person is bringing out quality that you need to.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I wanted to share I know people are kind of looking for practical things. So it's sort of like, okay, so how do we do this? Okay, I picked this person to help me grow. How do I make it better and not make it worse? And, you know, it's important to look at your relationship like a seesaw. Any relationship's like a seesaw. So when you do one thing, your partner reacts because of that thing you do, and vice versa. When you do something else, your partner reacts differently. You would say that's true, right? You know, that's the way relationships work. So people that are frustrated with their spouse say either there's a relapse that happened, or there's an active addiction, or there's just a behavior that's not productive in the marriage that the spouse keeps doing over and over again, okay? And so you want that to change. Chances are, actually, you know, let me just ask our listeners to imagine one scenario. If something's probably popped up for you, so just put that in your head, you know, whatever that scenario is. Like, this is the thing that my husband or wife does that drives me crazy, whether it's a relapse or whatever. And then I want you to think about, what do you always do when this happens? So think of that behavior. And then, you know, so once you think of that behavior, then I want to ask you, what happens when you do that behavior? So think of that, okay? And chances are, probably know the answer to this, but do you want the behavior that you get back, like the response that you get back from your spouse, is that the response you want? Chances are probably no. And so you probably have like a vicious cycle going, you know, over and over again. So this is the frustration of people. It's like, how do I change this? And the key pieces is very simplified, and we can, you know, there's much more to it, but this is just a tool I want to give you. Is that thing that you do, even though you're right, even though it's like, you know, my husband relapses, and then I tell him, go to a meeting, you need to go, you need to call your sponsor. And then he never calls the sponsor. He gets mad and slams the door and doesn't do anything and goes out and drinks again, or goes out and does whatever. And then I cry, and then it happens over and over again, right? So let's say that's the cycle. Well, if your response is always call your sponsor, and the response you always get back is slamming the door and get out, then stop doing that behavior. Even though you're right, because you are right. Of course you should call a sponsor. But the thing is that's the tweak in your thinking you want to do is don't think about being right. Think about getting a different response. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what can I do that's different? Because if you do anything different, and I have tons of techniques to help you with that we aren't able to cover here, but if you do something different, you'll get a different response. So what's something different that you could do instead of telling them to go to a meeting? One thing could be obviously like not saying anything. That could be just something totally different, right? Well, you'll get a different response then, because he's not going to slam the door, and because you haven't done the usual response, he'll do something else. And then the question is do I like that response? And then if you don't, then you do something else. So it's a matter of you can change your behaviors, and you can actually have an impact, and you can help people change theirs just by changing who you are. What you have to let go of is that control of, I'm right. This is what they need. I'm going to do this. And it's like, if it's not working, what's the point? Mm-hmm. And so that's the change that you can have in your thinking as the spouse that's really frustrated with an addiction or a relapse or anything, that it's like, I do have some control over that. And then that gives you a little bit of empowerment to be able to know that you can make some changes, but at the same time, being able to step back as well. You have to set up some boundaries and taking care of your own stuff too. So, chasing your spouse around and telling him to go to meetings and telling him he needs to do this and she needs to do that is usually not productive. And then you get entangled in this mess. And that's where your marriage really goes down and down and down. And so you can actually create change just by doing this simple tool and technique and seeing what changes you encounter in your spouse.
I love what you're saying. And I was thinking that maybe some people are still wondering, well, yeah, but he's such a bad role model for the kids, or she's such a bad role model for the kids. Mm-hmm. The kids part is like such a big one. Mm-hmm. What would you say to, people that are so worried about their kids seeing this behavior?
It's such a great question. Definitely kids, and, I have kids, you guys have kids, probably most of the people on the webinar have kids. They pick up way more than we give them credit for, which we always, it's because it's true. We always say that. So they know what's going on. So it's important to be honest with your children. It's important but also to keep them out of the drama and keep them protected for whatever's age appropriate for them. So when it's, it's a 5-year-old, you don't want to be screaming at them, at your husband in front, or at your wife in front of your 5-year-old, because, that's not something that a 5-year-old can handle. So what you have to do is learn, you need to control that anger, set the boundaries and say, I'm angry right now. Never argue never talk when you're angry. So take that time aside, be like, I'm really angry right now. Give me 10, my husband and I do that all the time. It's like, it's like, just give me 10 minutes. And then we come back and talk about it calmly, because that's when you can get stuff done. So being able to sort of stop yourself, get out of the room, do whatever you need to do just to get yourself out of the area. And in relation to your children, so that's number one, is making sure you don't have these explosive arguments because they're there. And then the other piece is whenever, daddy or mommy go to rehab, or mommy's gone for 5 days on a bender or something like that. So, let them know, because they know something's going on. Say, mom's not well right now. She's going to be away for a little bit if she's in rehab. I want you to know that, mommy loves you and I love you, and you're protected, and I'm going to be here for you. So those things, and being honest with them, but being able to curb it so that they can understand and still feel supported.
But like, if let's say the spouse is like drinking actively at the bottle and is like drunk, do you just like take your kids and go out of the house for a while?
I would say definitely, if you have something, basically the rule is take them out of any toxic situation. And so if your husband's coming home and he's drinking and cursing and hitting or throwing things, definitely take your kids out of the house and be able to help them, take them over grandma's house or whatever, just out of any toxic situation. So you really want to separate them from any of that stuff that they really don't need to see. But they do need to be informed that something, mommy's sick, daddy's sick, those things they need, because they need to know that
it's okay that not everything's okay, and we're going to try to take care of it, and we're going to protect you. And that way, your child feels like you're being honest, but at the same time feels protected, you know, in all this chaos.
That's really good. There's so many questions.
Yeah, and we're going to have time in a few minutes. We're going to have time for we're going to address any of your questions about what we talked about up until now, and or any other questions regarding this topic of addictions in your marriage. There is so much to talk about, and we are mindful that it is the middle of the day. Some of you are taking your lunch break, and we would love to be on, be on for a few hours, but we want to give the people a chance who need to leave to leave. But so if you have questions, you can please start writing them in the chat box, and we're going to get through them in a moment. So we want to let you know that, just to recap, we learned that your marriage can grow because of your addictions, and that it doesn't mean that an addiction doesn't mean that your relationship cannot work. And we talked about just what the definition of addictions, how if it's interfering with your relationship in your daily life, then there's a problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be worked on, and the variety of different resources that we can continue to talk about. But that it's not a coincidence to why you pick your partner, and that often we're attracted to a particular type of person or dealing with particular issues, and that's actually an opportunity for growth and healing. So to throw your relationship away just because of that is a mistake. It's important to be able to work through it and to see how you can do it. It does require patience, but as Kat said, that the seesaw analogy, that you can affect change by thinking about the different behaviors that you typically do in response, how those are met, and how you maybe could change behaviors. As we say, you can be right or in relationship. Kind of quit being right and figure out what works best for the relationship, for the whole. And that can change and have a ripple effect on your spouse. And finally, what do you do with children, and how to keep them safe, and also how to explain to them, be honest, and not kind of cover up what's going on, but do it in a way that's not too much for them. So it's really a delicate balancing act. We really need to have an understanding of addictions help and couples counseling that supports relationships and understands that unconscious agenda for a relationship. And we want to just share with you a resource today where we can really have the best of both worlds, and that is our webinar series that we're going to have called Couples in Recovery, Restoring Marriage Through Your Recovery Process. And this is really going to be an opportunity to expand upon what we learned today and give you more practical suggestions. We want to just share with you a few minutes of just about what it is, and then we're going to get to the questions, and then for those of you who want to get the peace process, they're going to get that at the end. So this is a great opportunity. We're going to have webinars with both of us together presenting.
Kat and you.
Yeah.
Not just me.
No, that's what I meant. Or all of us. Kat's going to be presenting on a lot of the addictions piece. We're going to be talking about some of the imago therapy. And it's a great way to be able to start learning about the assets of your relationship and how to enhance your relationship, and not in spite of it, but really because of it. So you're going to learn how to talk to your spouse about difficult topics, really be heard and understood, understand and be confident that you marry the right person, and also gain support for your recovery process, and know where to go and what to do and how to get the help that you need.
And be a model for your kids, which is, I know all the moms on the call are thinking about, and really have the support for going through this process, especially when other things maybe aren't working for you, or you haven't even started, the recovery process.
So here's really what's it's going to be 3 webinars in the recovery process and what you need to do to get healing. We're going to have audio visual, so we're going to have a slideshow along with the audio presentation, and through the webinar process, through that time period, we will both be available for your email questions, so we can customize the material for you. And our program it's $147, and if you sign up in the next 24 hours, we're going to give you a host of bonuses. And the website is wowworkshops.org. www.wealthworkshop.com/recovery. You'll see that on your screen. And if you're listening to it, the replay, you can let us know when you listen to it, and we'll be happy to honor the bonuses if you really want to be able to join us, because the bonuses are really valuable as well. We want to share with you what we're offering. We got a little problem here with the slide.
I don't know what happened with that.
Oh, so one of the things we're going to offer, besides the 3 webinars, we're going to have a bonus webinar for those of you who sign up in the next 24 hours, where Dr. Kat and us and Rivka and I are going to answer any of your questions that you have that you want to have addressed about the topic. So we'll be able to explain some of the general material that we'll be presenting and answer your specific questions in a webinar format.
Or it could be also on the phone. We'll figure out the technical
phone
parts,
conference,
but
right.
We're just getting so many like very, very specific questions, and we want to get to all of them. So I thought this was really important that like we would have a 1 to 2 hour phone call together, and you could actually submit your questions via email. So if you feel more comfortable, so it's confidential, and then we can really address those questions and answers for you.
Right. We're also going to offer a free night at the Marriott Hotel, which is about $200 value. And we're having, and free, not just any Marriott Hotel or any time, but we're having, if you sign up for the Getting the Love You Want workshop, it's an Imago couples workshop that we host usually every quarter. It's June 3rd through 5th at the Towson Marriott. It's an amazing workshop. And it just really helps. It's an eye opener. Couples walk away. It's just amazing to see how they come in, the tension on at the beginning of the workshop and at the end, just the joy and the connection that they experience and the tools that they gain. So if you're looking for a kind of a instant shot of new energy into your relationship, this is it. So if you do register for that workshop, we'll be happy to give you a free night at the hotel on us if you register for our webinar series in the next 24 hours.
And we'll send you the link to register for the Getting the Love You Want weekend.
And then finally, Kat has offered her ABC 3-part video series. If you could just teach us a little bit about what that's all about, Kat, and how that will be helpful, and for those of you who want to take advantage of that.
Sure, yeah. This is going to be an expansion on just that do something different little tip that I talked to you about. I actually have in the first of the 3-part video series how to directly be able to change your spouse's behaviors by changing your own, using several different techniques. And also how to start enjoying each other again in spite of the addiction. That doesn't have to be something that defines you, and how to start actually, that's great. How do I start doing that? And I actually show you step by step how to do that, and how to start kind of putting romance and love back into your relationship that has maybe gone very toxic or estranged, or is just stressed out. And so it's, really packed with tons and tons of information, all 3 videos.
That's great. So it's really for those of you who really want to take advantage of the bonus, this is just jam-packed. You get so much. In addition to the 3 webinars, you're going to get 3 more videos. It's just a lot of great information. But I also
like how Kat is very chunk size, very easily, not too much overkill with information, just really practical tidbits that are super, influential.
Okay. So we don't want you to miss out on this webinar series. You can go again to wellworkshops.org/recovery. And for those of you who do put in the work, who purchase the program and the webinar, and you don't feel like you're getting the results, and you email us to explain why, we're glad to give you a refund if you're not satisfied. But we're hoping that you definitely would be. Just to go through again, so you get the webinar series, a 3-part webinar. If you sign up in the next 24 hours, you get the live Q&A session. You get the free room at the Marriott Hotel with registration for the couples workshop, and you get the video series. So we're talking about over $1,000 value.
If for some reason people don't feel they need the bonuses or whatever, can they still purchase Couples in Recovery?
Yes, you can. So you can still purchase Couples in Recovery. And it's $147. You can still purchase it, but if you don't want the bonuses, you don't have to take the bonuses. But if you do want the bonuses, if you feel like they'd be helpful, then by all means, you can pay for it. Basically, you go to the website that we gave you the link, and then you go to the checkout page. You can pay by PayPal. You could pay it over 6 months via PayPal credit, without any interest. And then you'll be sure to look in your email for the webinar login details, and then we'll alert you when each webinar will be taking place and when you can listen to them.
So that's like $24 a month for 6 months.
Yeah.
If
So
you
it's,
want to do that.
so right now, this is we're just leaving this screen up so you can see the URL if you do want to sign up for the workshop. And if you have any questions, please email us about it, info@themarriagerestorationproject.com. Again, the bonuses end in 24 hours, so we'll say 24 hours from the time we get off the webinar when all the Q&As are done. So now we would like to open up for questions and answers. We really like to hear from you. Any thoughts you have about any of the material we presented, or perhaps topics, components that we didn't touch upon that you wanted to hear about. So let's see what questions we have.
So I just got a question. What if, so this woman is a wife who struggles with alcohol addiction and her husband is a drug addict. So she, you know, having two of you, I guess, makes it so much harder. Is what she's at. Yeah, she's a recovering drug addict. Her husband is in active addiction with alcohol and he is in denial. Help. I can imagine that would be harder with both spouses having that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a question attached to that?
Help, yeah.
I guess just help. So I know it's like you can't solve the problem right now, but I guess any insight you can provide into having, you know, two spouses that both have issues with addictions.
I think it sounds like the challenge here is that you have one in recovery and one with active addiction, and so certainly being able to get your own help is a good thing. But also, if there's two of you and one is in active addiction, that Al-Anon is actually a really great resource as well, because that's for spouses and other relatives who have people in their lives that have active addictions or are in recovery. And so kind of having that component is a good thing because you can also utilize those tools that they give you and resources that they give you in your community in order to be able to help. And, a lot of the stuff we covered as far as how to control your anger, how to kind of change some of your behaviors in order to elicit change in your partner. So all of those tools really still apply. And it's just a matter of just applying those, really. I mean, those really don't change. I think the biggest thing with recovery is how do we both get well and make time for our recoveries. And, like I would say, you have to schedule them just like anybody else, to be able to put them in the schedule just like you do your kids' soccer practice or anything like that. So it's hard to answer that question because there's not a specific question attached. So I just kind of wanted to pinpoint a little bit, but it doesn't have to be hard. And if you're both in recovery, helping each other, even if someone has lapsed or relapsed, that you can actually be stronger because you understand what you're going through. And so both of you know the power of addiction and know how tough it is. And so you really can be even more sympathetic about where your partner is struggling and vice versa. So it actually can be such an asset to your marriage instead of a liability because you know where you're both coming from.
That's really the compassion piece. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have somebody who wants to know, after she's removed her kids from the toxic situation, how would she know when to bring them back?
Well, it would depend on what's going on with your spouse. And so it's basically, I guess the short answer would be whenever the crisis has decreased. And so if there's a crisis where, for example, your husband's coming home and he's intoxicated, then when he's not intoxicated anymore, you can bring the kids back after you've talked over with your spouse. I took the children out and they're at my mother's house, and we need to work on this, and this, come to an agreement, and this is how we're going to deal with the kids when we bring them back. And so that might be the next day. So it really is when the toxic or chaotic situation has stopped. And that could be a matter of weeks if it's something that's a domestic abuse situation where you really need a lot more support and being able to have some, maybe grandmother, grandfather, or a family friend have your kids, or it could be a matter of a day, or it could be a matter of a few hours. But it's also important to talk to your spouse before bringing the kids back to make sure, how are we going to address this? Because they need to know what happened whenever they come back. So it's like, daddy wasn't, daddy was sick for a day, or, daddy had a hard time, and, we had to bring you over grandma's, and so, whatever that situation is.
Right. Interesting. Somebody asked a question because they have a difficult schedule. They don't know if they're able to attend the webinar at the time, or is there going to be recordings for the 3-part? So for the 3-part webinar series, you will be able to, everything will be, you'll get the recordings, you'll be able to listen to the replay at what a convenient time for you. The only, obviously the Q&A, bonus, if you sign up for the bonus, you also receive the recording for that. But obviously, if you're not live, you won't be able to participate. But you can send in questions beforehand and listen to that. So that was somebody was curious about.
Right.
What about? You have another question? Yeah.
What if your spouse says they're going to handle their addiction and they're not truthful about it? Like I guess they're kind of in denial, and they lie about how much they're actually drinking. And they don't really want to get help. They say they're going to handle it.
And they don't believe in therapy. That's what she said, yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay not to believe in therapy. Not everybody does. And, therapies, I guess it's all relative, because all of it's therapy, really. Whether you're talking with some friends and venting, or going to a professional, really depends on, the level of help that you need. But, I always go back to once is a thing, second is a coincidence, third is a pattern. And so it's like, yeah, I'll handle it. Okay, well, give that person the benefit of the doubt. Okay, we'll handle it. Like, I'm going to stop drinking. Okay, you can handle it. So change that behavior, see what happens, give them the benefit of the doubt. Next day they're drunk. Okay, that didn't work. So address it again. Now what's going to happen? Okay, so maybe it's a little bit harder, but I can handle it. Okay, maybe giving them the benefit of the doubt the second time. Oh, they get drunk again. Okay, now it didn't work. So really making sure that you're putting your spouses, giving them the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time making sure that you're putting a mirror in front of them and making sure that they're responsible for their behaviors. Because what happens with problematic marriages where addiction keeps coming over and over again, or when somebody won't get help, is that we enable and we deny that stuff's going on. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll deal with it. And then there's a relapse or a lapse, or something happens and we pretend like it didn't happen. So always putting that mirror in front and not speaking in anger. So letting it go. And then the next day when, husband's sober or wife is sober, say, we need to talk about last night, you got drunk. And always putting that mirror in and making sure that they know that you're paying attention, because that's the thing with addiction is like, if nobody's saying anything, I'm just going to keep doing what I want to keep doing. And I'm going to pretend like this isn't a problem, and everyone will pretend along with me. And so stopping that pretending and really being sure that you're putting that mirror and letting, spouse know that you're paying attention, but at the same time, not doing it in anger or spite or resentment, doing it in those calm times where you've been able to set that aside, get all your venting out, talk to a friend, and then approaching your spouse about it and say, okay, this didn't work, now what?
Yeah, I think that's great. And Shlomo, do you want to explain the appointment process that you talk about a lot, about like before you have to have a difficult discussion with somebody, what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, so there's usually one person in the relationship who's ready to talk at any moment, and there's one who would rather delay a conversation indefinitely. So it requires a stretch for both partners, but what I found most helpful, what I teach couples, is to make an appointment. And this is when we're even in sessions, because we want to create those new neural pathways and to be more intentional. So if you catch someone in the stressful moment, they're not going to respond productively. And we want to think about, what's the goal of this conversation? Are we trying to punish our spouse? Are we trying to get them to do something differently or change? Or are we even trying to connect with them? If it's the latter two, we want to make sure that we're being intentional. And acknowledging them as an individual, that they deserve to to be able to say when they want to speak to us. So I invite you to ask your spouse if you want to talk to something. Is now a good time? If not, when are you available? And try to do something within 24 hours, because the spouse who doesn't want to talk will push it off forever. So the spouse who doesn't want to talk has to stretch by setting a rain check, but the spouse who does want to talk, their stretch is holding back and not just talking whenever they're heated. And it's never a good idea to talk in the heat of the moment. It's not going to be productive. You're just not going to be able to think straight. You're going to be in that part of your brain, which we're going to actually talk about in the webinar series, that how the brain works when you're under stress and how to have a conversation in a more effective way so that you really can get the message across and experience change and experience safety and connection. And I think that, one of the things that I see with couples is that the connection is there. They want to connect, but they don't know how to do it. And they just are feeling hurt and really unsafe. And the most important thing to do is to recreate safety in the relationship so that you can both fully show up. And part of that is respecting each other, and including that is asking for an appointment, asking when the other person's available, and that shows the respect for your spouse. And we will talk more about that in the webinar series, about the importance of safety, how to create safety in the relationship, and how that makes a huge difference in changing. And I just had a situation where I had an emergency intervention with a couple for 2 days, and they were in a pretty bad space when they came in. But I would say it was so easy to switch, to get back to that initial connection that they had, and that this beneath the surface, because they really wanted it. They just didn't know how to do it. They didn't feel safe enough to really open up, and they were able to share things. The one spouse who usually didn't open up, he was able to share things that were bothering him and that kind of were festering and causing the resentment and causing him to have outbursts. And the other spouse felt like they were able to really be heard, and that their spouse wasn't just kind of like running away, but really was present for them. So it's just so amazing, and how simple. I mean, I didn't mean to simplify it, but it's just so brilliantly simple. The process that can really change your relationship, and we're excited to teach you that in the webinar series.
So again, we just like to invite everybody, if you have any further questions that you want to send in, feel free to do that in the chat box. Otherwise, you can visit www.wowworkshops.org/recovery.
Any more questions that we have? Yeah, and we really want to encourage you to take advantage of the bonus, because there's a really
to spend time with Kat and us. Let's see, we're getting some questions here.
Let's see that one.
What if your spouse is more concerned about
your addict spouse? If the addict spouse is more concerned about his addiction than you are.
Oh, does that mean that she's not worried about it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess I'm confused with the question. So the person that's addicted is more concerned with the addiction than the spouse that's not addicted?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why she's not concerned about it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more background on that to be able to answer. What the problem is with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That was the only details that were given. Well, I mean, I would think that's really good that he has the awareness, right, about.
Yeah, I guess, the only thing I can think of is, where it might be problematic is that if the person that's not addicted feels like the addicted spouse, that it's not really a problem and is hindering the recovery, the person that's addicted feels like his spouse is, or her spouse is hindering the recovery process because, it's not a big deal or something like that.
Right.
So that's the only thing I could maybe think of if that speaks to it. And if that is the case, really, I think it's a matter of, don't minimize your spouse's struggle, whatever that might be. And so if your spouse, for any reason, says something is a problem, whether that's addiction to a chemical or anything else, really take that with sympathy and empathy, and take that as something that's genuine, and tackle that together. So you really want to be a support to any struggle that you have together, because you want to go with everything hand in hand. And that's what happens with marriage, is that you want to tackle every problem hand in hand. So if the person that's addicted in recovery feels like his or her spouse is endangering the recovery or not taking it seriously, then that can really run amok in a marriage, and can really destroy a marriage, because that's going to eventually divide you. So being able to talk about, let's talk about this addiction and why you feel it's a problem for you, and where I am with it, and how we can handle this together, because now it's the problem of you're not taking me seriously.
And I think that's why we created Couples in Recovery, is because we don't want anything to divide you in your marriage. So, if addiction is just the one way that's happening, for both people, we want couples to get the luxury of finally being heard and understood. So we wouldn't want that spouse to feel that, his spouse says, oh, it's not a big deal, when he's truly worried about it. So we really want, every couple going through this to have that, luxury and the process that we teach in Couples in Recovery that can really get them from point A to point B. Because we just don't want anything to come between the two of you. There's a couple of other really specific questions that I think go a little bit beyond the scope of what we can answer in like our 1 hour webinar, because they're very like unique to that situation.
Right, and we could respond to you by email for those ones. I just something that were not relevant to the very extremely specific. Anything else you have on there?
The other emotion that was kind of talked about, like in one of the questions, is just a lot of fear. It's scary to see your spouse be out of control, right? So that's what this woman is saying. She's afraid. He's not violent or anything, but she's afraid because she sees him, not in control. So I guess how would she handle the fear, without him being able to even help her with it?
Well, I think that that's a really genuine thing to say. And I think that's really what she should lead with her husband, is because, anger is a secondary emotion. So while anger is a valid emotion, a lot of times it also covers up genuine emotions. And one of the things that it covers up is fear. So we might be fearful, but we act angry. And so, what she's saying, which is wonderful, is I'm fearful of this. And so bringing that to your husband, saying, at times when you come home or when I see you out of control, it scares me. It's scary for me. And that really puts the conversation in a vulnerable place, instead of, good addict, or, really makes me angry when. So really leading with that, I wouldn't omit that at all. Just having a genuine conversation. Shlomo talked about how to do that, and making the appointment, which is, also something that I tell all my clients is make those appointments. So I'm glad you talked about that. And so make that appointment and talk about that fear, and lead with that as a conversation. And I want to help you through this. How can we tackle this together? And, of course, we're going to show a lot of techniques on how to do that in this 3-part webinar series that we can't cover here. But that's definitely the first step in dealing with that, is not to mask that fear, because it's good to be afraid, and it's good to talk about that, because it is scary.
Well, this piggybacks on that, what you just answered, and also that woman before that asked the question when that we needed more clarification on. Some people are writing, they just don't think anything can really help. So they feel hopeless. They feel like no change that they make on themselves will really, truly have an impact on their spouse. Can this really work for somebody who has an active addiction? I guess is, please provide the hope for us, Kat, that you've seen this work before. Shlomo, I know you've seen this work before. Like, tell us, guys, that this can actually really work.
But that working on yourself can help the
relationship, like that they can actually see changes. They don't have to live like this forever.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a matter of making those changes in yourself and setting up those boundaries, and it's a matter of not enabling your spouse to be able to do what he or she has continued to do, because we're very much a part of the addiction process of, okay, well, I won't tell your dad, or, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll put this money back in your account. I know that was an accident. We do all of those things to try to help. Or the biggest thing is we keep it secret from everybody else. You know, nobody knows my husband's addicted to crack, or nobody knows that my sister has a pornography addiction. And, you know, so it's a matter of, you know, you can learn to apply a lot of behaviors that is definitely going to help your spouse get kicked out of that addiction mode and start going to recovery, because what you're going to do is, what you're going to learn is taking those resources for addiction out of the picture and increasing the consequences and decreasing the benefits of continuing that problematic behavior. That's what you can do. And so there's absolutely hope, and there's absolutely possibility that you can help your spouse overcome addiction. And hitting rock bottom, I just don't believe in that. I never have, because it's all about where you get off the elevator, you know. And if you want to talk about hitting rock bottom, is that you can create that rock then, you know, and it's about the things that you do has a direct impact on the addiction and the behaviors. And if you think that you aren't involved in that, it's just a complete lie. And that's a good thing. That's not to say you're to blame for the addiction, but what it is to say is to empower you that there's certain things that you can do that will change, create change for you. And I've seen it happen over and over again. I've been doing this since 1999 and been helping couples, and it's absolutely possible. Is it different for everybody? Yes, absolutely. Everyone's got their different ways of getting off the elevator, and they have different resources and different consequences of when they'll stop, but everyone has a matter of, this is too hard, I need to do something else. So it's just a matter of increasing those consequences and decreasing the benefit of addiction.
So you've really seen this work.
Absolutely. Over and over again. It's human behavior is a formula. It is so predictable. It's just absolutely predictable. So it's a matter of just tweaking certain things, and addiction's no different. So it's not a mystery. And I think that's why it's such a problem, I think, in marriages and in other relationships, is because we view it as this mystical thing that's overpowering and we can't do anything about. And that's just not true. We can absolutely overcome it. And you can get the process started and by yourself, helping your partner get into recovery, whether it's dealing with denial or just this long neuro pathway that they've created. Does that mean there'll be lapses and relapses? Yes, absolutely. That's part of the recovery process. And so that's wrapping your head around that piece too, is how do we deal with that? And if your spouse knows that he or she can come to you during those lapses and relapses, and that you'll be there for your spouse and continue to be there and continue to work as long as things progress, then there's less, that hiding doesn't need to be there, because a lot of times addicts hide because they don't want to be punished for having a lapse or relapse. And that's part of the recovery process. So also accepting that piece as well.
Yeah, and I think that the as you said, what's the cause of it? We don't know. It could be that the addiction predated the relationship, but if you're able to work on the relationship, I think that you also can help prevent the relapse, because it could be that there's certain things. Sometimes people aren't getting their needs met in the relationship, and they're looking elsewhere, and the addictions can become kind of an exit out of the relationship. So, by working on the relationship and keeping the energy between the couple, I think you can, in strengthening that relationship, there's less likelihood that there's going to be a relapse, I think, because you have that strong foundation and connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love how you demystified this huge, addictions. You really demystified it. You made it just like a regular challenge that couples have to face in their marriage. So, it's frightening, but they don't have to be so frightened and feel completely hopeless. They can get the support and the safety net and the system that they need to recover themselves and help their spouse recover. And your brilliance is encapsulated in our 3-part webinar series, Couples in Recovery, which we're so excited about. And people that purchase it should look out for emails that will be sent to them with the 3 classes. And then we'll let you know when the Q&A call is being scheduled. So we're really excited and grateful to you, Kat, for spending this over an hour with us to help spread this information to the world about addictions.
I was glad to be here. Glad to be here. I hope people got a lot out of it, and it really is. It's not a mystery. And it's totally doable.
That's amazing.
Great, and we'd love to help you get to that point, to help you heal in your, if you are experiencing addiction, or your spouse and your relationship.
Great.
Great.
We're just going to turn on our camera to say goodbye. There we go. Well,
Thank you
thanks
for joining
everybody.
us.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will be in touch. Thanks, Kat.
No problem.
Talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.